So, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Rorik Henrikson. I'm here from the DGP lab at the University of Toronto, and I'm here to talk about Storeoboard, sketching stereoscopic storyboards, minus the right-hand side. So I was going to start off. Hopefully this still works. Cross your fingers, maybe. Going, there we go. Okay. So I was going to start off by showing you these images, and these are images, storyboard panels taken from a stereoscopic storyboard created with our tool from an award-winning film. For those of you that have glasses, and I think fortunately most of you do, you should be able to see that these stick out. They're not flat. If you don't have glasses, you have to use your imagination a bit, but some of these lines should be floating. Essentially anything that's not gray should be floating in front of the screen. So to properly understand this, I wanted to start off by asking, how many people here have seen a stereoscopic or 3D movie? Show of hands. Okay, pretty much all of you. How many of you have seen a bad stereoscopic movie? And by bad, I don't mean that it was a bad acting or a bad script, but rather it was uncomfortable, made you feel dizzy, or gave you headaches. Good 2/3 at least. So a lot of people, a lot of people talk about having a bad experience with 3D, and one of the things, the interesting thing is that generally the stereoscopic community knows what causes these effects that result in a bad experience. So the question is, why are there so many issues? And basically the stereoscopic community is encouraging people to start planning their films early on as 3D, because what's happening is they're not making correct choices. And there's a lot of things that work in 2D that don't work in 3D. And if you make a mistake in 3D, it's a lot harder to fix than the 2D counterpart. So generally planning movies, I should also say, the problem is with planning, that's great if you want to plan. Unfortunately, there are no tools currently to talk about stereo concepts at the earliest stages. So the standard planning thing, what happens is generally you start with a script, a director will read that, and the director will think of some kind of visualization of what they think it should look like. So from here, the director will often sit down with an artist and create a storyboard, a comic book-like representation of the film, showing key moments within the frame. And sorry, for those of you who have glasses, again, most of you, this part isn't stereo, so you don't really need them. They're not going to do much. So these storyboards act essentially as a way for the director to get their ideas down on paper. It allows them to try different concepts, try different camera angles, work out problems, and then these storyboards are then used to act as a communication tool between different departments. Everyone can see what's working, and everyone ends up working towards the exact same goal rather than some approximation of it. So the problem is, these are great tools. Unfortunately, they're 2D, and you're not talking about stereo concepts. So in stereo, or 3D, you need to talk about things such as object placement. In 2D, you're basically composing an image within a frame. In 3D, you're looking through a window into a 3D space, so you're very aware of where everything is in relationship to each other. So things such as the plane separation actually makes a difference. The parallax position, what's in front of the screen, what's behind the screen, what's on the screen itself, which is the easiest thing for your eyes to see. And the depth budget. So the whole reason for adding stereo to films is basically increase the immersion. It's not some gimmick, as we often think it is, but the idea is if it's well done, it's a lot like music. So if you ever watch a movie with the music turned off, it's generally flat, kind of not very exciting, but when you turn the music back on, it has a lot of excitement. And so the idea with stereo is it's supposed to even take that excitement up another level, get you more involved in the story. But just like with music, you don't want music to be loud from the beginning to end. You want dynamics. You want loud moments, quiet moments. You want to play with it a bit. You want to do the same thing with depth. You just don't want a deep movie throughout the whole thing. And generally, by changing the depth, you can actually further play with audience's emotion. But again, the problem is that there is no tool to talk about these things while they're planning. So what we wanted to do was take these concepts and a couple others and fit them into the storyboard process, which is what this whole project was about. So because we wanted to work with an existing process, we wanted to keep it simple. We wanted to tailor this to storyboard artists. And the way we did this is we actually extrapolated on a concept they already use. They often talk about foreground, midground, and background. And so by taking this concept and expanding it, we've decided to treat the drawing volume as a stack of transparent sheets. And simply by allowing the artist to choose which sheet they wish to draw upon, they can start very quickly building up a conceptualization of a 3D scene, and what they see is in stereo. And so this probably will work, although it's been copied a couple times. So I'd like to show you the actual tool, and as you saw, demos are kind of crazy, so hopefully this works. Cross your fingers. There we go. Okay, so this is 3/4 of the, or a little bit more, 5/7 of the Storyboard tool. I'm just going to start a new scene here, and mostly works. Okay. So on the surface, this acts like any other drawing tool. You can draw on the screen. You can use pressure to control thickness. The difference here, though, as I mentioned, we tried to divide the space into a stack of sheets. And so the way the artist chooses the sheet they wish to work on, you may have noticed on the left-hand side, there's this little slider bar. And by moving it back or away from yourself, you can choose a plane that's behind what's already been drawn. And by drawing on this, you can actually draw behind what's already there. By sliding it forward, you can draw in front of what's already there. And so very quickly, you can build up a stereoscopic scene in live time and have these discussions. So you may have also, the other thing I want to mention here is that as I'm moving the slider, you may notice that it's probably easier to see without the glasses, that I constantly change the image on the screen itself so that your current depth plane is always at the place of or the depth of your pen. This ensures that the lines that you create with your pen appear under the pen rather than floating way behind or on top of where you're trying to draw. So the other thing you may have noticed is every time I drew something, it created a thumbnail in the slider bar. So these thumbnails actually provide a lot of functionality. First of all, you can see where things are. So I can see that I've selected the thumbnail that has a little smiley face on it. So that tells me where things are. You can see how much space there is between the planes based on the location of the thumbnails. You can see how much of the depth budget you're using based on the first and last thumbnail. You can see the spread. And as well, next to my little cursor here, you may notice there's a little yellow arrow. And as I said, while I'm changing the scene, I'm constantly changing the depth of it. But when you're done, this little yellow arrow shows you where the screen of the movie theater is actually going to be. So everything below that is actually in audience space, and everything above that is in screen space. These thumbnails actually have yet a further option that allow you to, these thumbnails you can now manipulate, be used to manipulate the depth that things are at. And so you can slide things forward and backwards in live time, or you could potentially select multiple things and slide them forward and backwards, or you could just pinch simply to squish them together and stretch them apart. So I'm going to shorten this a bit. I have 5 minutes left, apparently. But being a storyboard tool, it's not just a drawing tool. There's a concept of a sequence of panels. So by tapping on the right edge, you can flip to the next, and tapping on the left edge, you can go to the previous. There is a concept of the whole storyboard where you can see a set of panels. You can annotate. You can jump into a panel. There's a depth script, which I'll talk about in a minute, but seeing I'm shortening this. I also wanted to mention, in doing this, we used a very user-centered design approach and evaluation. This is all offset, but we worked with one storyboard artist. We worked with a local college where we talked with 2 instructors, 7th, 3rd, and 4th year storyboard artist students, 6 industry professionals, and deployed this on a feature film. So these are some of the assets, or part of the assets. I'll skip most of those. Again, if you're interested in seeing these, I obviously have them, so come talk to me after. I'm going to also show you pretty much where I started. These are most of the storyboards from this live feature film that I was talking about. It's a bit better quality. And so while they were doing this, the director was using a pre-visualization tool to kind of spec out their scenes. And he found it incredibly frustrating because it was a very slow process. It would take him the better part of a night to work through one scene. And he generally lost most of the ideas he had while he was working on it. And so when we got this to him, he found that this allowed him to, just get to the quote here somewhere, there it is, work at the speed of thought. And then further on, this acted as a tool that allowed departments to better understand the scene, especially lighting and production design, because they knew where the world was already going to be. And this meant that when they arrived to set, that they were very quickly able to set up. There was no playing and trying to figure things out. The other thing I wanted to mention with this is, as of a couple months ago, I'll start back with the first one where I started. They were actually awarded a very prestigious 3D Lumiere Award, it's called. It's for their 3D work in the film. And it's an award that's been given to directors such as James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Ang Lee, and they actually beat out movies such as Star Wars and Inside Out, again, for their work on the film. So because of time and problems we had, I'm going to shorten this, and I'll stop there. But what I want to leave you with, if it goes back, there we go, maybe. Okay, so essentially, this is a stereoscopic 3D storyboard tool. It allows people to play with things such as object placement, plane separation, depth budgets, and parallax position. It allows artists to very quickly, fluidly, and easily explore the 3D space in live time while they're thinking. It facilitates stereo collaboration between different groups of teams. And ultimately, it fits into existing workflows, so they don't have to learn new processes in the process. So at that, I want to say thank you to my collaborative team, to Bruno, Fanny, Karan, and Ravin. and open it for questions if there's time. I was going to leave it with video of it being used. Maybe we can get just a couple minutes of this and go from there.
Yes, you've actually got 2 minutes left.
Oh, 2 minutes. Oh,
So
awesome.
we're
Okay.
So if the next speaker can come up and get set up. So feel free, please come up and ask questions.
And again, because of the tight time, I'm happy to answer questions after, of course. It's okay.